Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 9th episode of D&Debates, a podcast where a bunch of us friends try to argue why their 5th edition D&D opinions are the most correct opinions. Today, we're looking at one of my favorite parts of the game, flavor. There's more to the game than mechanics, as I've talked about a lot here, and I can't wait to hear about the best ways y'all like to spice up the aesthetics. I'm your moderator for this episode, and who are my lovely debaters who join me here today?
I am Scott.
I'm Corey.
And I'm Jake.
Perfect. Now, the way this works, as always, is we have 3 rounds of debates questions. The first 2, my not players, wow, debaters here already know. The last one is a fun surprise that I will spring on them when the time comes. And before we hop in, I'm going to clarify that, yes, flavor and aesthetics are very subjective, but here in D&Debates, we don't really care about that. We're here to be petty and stubborn, not open and constructive. So with that being said, let's hop right into the first question. Just out of the gate, I want to know what subclass has the most flavor? Not necessarily the most potential for flavor. Like a battle master fighter, it has a lot of potential for flavor. I want something that has just the most inherent flavor burst of fun and style. I'll give you guys 90 seconds. Let me find a die. Oh no, need a die to roll with see who goes first. Okay, that is, I rolled a d20. That's not going to help me. I was going to figure that out later. Let me do. Okay. Thursdays. Okay, Scott, you're going first. I will give you 90 seconds. And whenever you are ready, tell me what subclass has the most flavor.
Okay. In terms of immediate, obvious, and explosive flavor, I do not think you can do better than the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. It is one of the only subclasses that both allows you to play whatever kind of character, personality-wise, that you like, and includes strong physical flavor and strong tropes for you to play into in every ability that it has. I want to cover 3 pillars that I think makes this sorcerer both the most flavorful spellcaster and the most versatile of the options we're presenting. Firstly, the flavor text and associated psionic origins tables offers whispering influences, imaginary best friends that aren't so imaginary, schizophrenic visions of tentacles, far realm creatures growing inside and outside of you. There are RP implications for all of these origins, which is crucial. Second, I think it's vital that the Aberrant Mind has physicality attached to it. Revelation in Flesh, its 14th level ability, has you manifesting writhing cilia, tendrils growing from your eye sockets, graying warped skin. You are becoming a Cthulhu creature as you grow in power. They enforce a psychic maddening vibe by allowing you to cast without requiring components, telepathic speech, black holes. It has great evocative ability after great evocative ability. Third, and most importantly for spellcasters, the spells. With many spellcasters, subclasses depend on you picking flavor-appropriate spells, but Aberrant Mind gives you these flavorful spells already baked into the class. Evard's Black Tentacles, Sending, Telekinesis, Hunger of Hadar. It's rare in making sure that all of your abilities are strongly tied to the Psychic Cthulhu flavor.
All right, 3 seconds over. That's not a huge deal, though. Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, very interesting. That is some good arguments put out there. But let's see who goes next. I put away my die. What am I doing? Okay, Corey, you are next, or in second. So, Aberrant Mind, what do you think is better than the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer?
Today I will be arguing the Circle of Stars Druid. So in terms of flavor, Druids are always seen as a class full of environmentalist mages that wear shades of green and brown, and who can blame that perception? This is the traditional aesthetic. But the biggest concept in the Druidic world is in fact nature. But what is nature? Is it the trees, the earth, the flora, the fauna? The answer is not always. The Circle of Stars Druid serves the purpose to explore the natural facet of the stars with an astrological flavor that extends the Druid's attunement to nature to more than just the immediate greenery of the world's ground level. Astronomy is a natural science after all. You get reflavored spell focus in the form of a customizable star map. You get to use wild shape to take form of constellations, the animals of the cosmos, with starry form, and you get to use astrological guidance with the cantrip and guiding bolt, as well as cosmic omen. The Circle of Stars Druid is by far the most flavorful subclass because it takes everything about the baseline concepts and mechanics of druids, being in touch with the powers of nature and using that power to take different natural forms and cast spells that reflect such a connection, and recontextualizes them to exemplify the natural aesthetic of the stars, astrology, astronomy, cosmology, etc. It's super cool, super flavorful, and gives a druid more flavor than what may seem to be the classic feel of any other druid subclass and any other subclass, period.
Wow, fantastic. And I have zero bias in this at all. I think for you just amazing bonus points out of gate. Because like I said, no bias whatsoever towards that decision. I am completely neutral here.
Amanda, I thought you were playing a Circle of Stars druid in their campaign that Jake's
What?
playing.
What? No, I mean, yeah. And she is like my favorite character in the entire world, but that's like besides the point.
My bad, my bad.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm completely neutral. I'm objective moderator. Although
I'm a
Jake,
scummy debater. I'm a cheap player.
He-
Everyone
he's
listening
so
out there,
cheap.
I'm
We're
a
going to
cheapo.
address this in the chaos round.
Jake, you have 90 seconds. Tell me,
Uh.
what do you think is the most flavorful subclass?
Well, you two have gone for something new and shiny in Tasha's. I'm going for something a bit more old-fashioned. I'm going for the Hexblade Warlock. And I think all subclasses are favored from their own way, of course, but I think Hexblade gives opportunities for a Warlock that its other subclasses do not necessarily. So the other Warlocks, you have patrons of these greater beings. But the thing with the Hexbladed Warlock is that your patron kind of is always there with you. So it's going to be the weapon you wield, usually. And throughout the whole game, the DM will have the opportunity to maybe the sword kind of whispers to them, guides them along the way. And when you're using it in battle, it really feels like you're using the power of your patron. Like other times you're just spamming Eldritch Blast or something, and you know your patron gave you those powers, but it doesn't really feel like your patron is doing it for you. And it also gives your DM a great chance to introduce some weapon into the world, build some lore around it, and the player can kind of learn about this weapon as they go along, and their connection to it can improve as they level up. You also get the opportunities to combine melee and magic, something few subclasses can do. And I think just the amount of possibilities, there's a lot. Yeah, I'm out of time, so I'll stop there.
Oh, that's good. Time to sped up. Anyways, perfect. Love that. We have Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, Circle of Stars Druid, and Hexblade Warlock. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to just argue it out and tell me why you're the most correct.
I'd like to address the elephant in the room real quick and make a small disclaimer. Now, the Circle of Stars is the bastion of flavor before this debate in Amanda's eyes. I am not so insane to argue that the Circle of Stars is without flavor. It's one of the most flavorful subclasses in the game. What I am instead going to argue is that it requires, Vega is a very, very flavorful character, and I love that flavor. However, if you don't pick, if you don't boost your intelligence, if you don't pick spells like divination, it requires a lot of player choice to play into a very specific archetype. That archetype is very flavorful. You play a diviner, that's a very cool thing to do. That's the only thing you do as a Circle of Stars druid. The mechanics back up like other combat options and everything. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that if you are not playing an astronomer, diviner type character who has like this wise, scientist, intelligent kind of vibe, you are undercutting the subclass and you come up with muddled flavor. The Aberrant Mind, by contrast, is more malleable because it allows you to be afraid of your psionic powers. It allows you to embrace them and be a master manipulator behind the scenes. It contains just as much flavor inside the subclass, but it also allows for differences in motivation and differences in vibes that I don't think are present in the Circle of Stars Druid, as strong as it is flavorfully.
Yeah, Amanda, I'm sure you thought that Corey arguing for Circle of Stars Druids was a compliment of sorts, saying that your subclass is inherently the most flavorful, but I would argue it's the opposite. Thy claiming it is so he's saying, well, I don't think Corey actually believes this, but that the flavor of Vega is due inherently because of her subclass. And I don't think that's the case. I think, as Scott said, she is a flavorful character, but I think it's through her own choices and her decisions to kind of manifest her subclass through these path of divination and such that makes her flavorful. It isn't inherently being the Circle of Stars
Exactly.
Druid.
What happens if you grab a Circle of Stars Druid? This is why I'm arguing that like the spell casting is a big part of my class. What happens if you grab a Circle of Stars Druid and you have a new player who just kind of picks spells at random, and the spells they pick, they don't have Moonbeam, they don't have any like fun star style things. They just kind of pick up like giant insect because that sounds kind of cool, or they pick up like grasping vine or entangle or plant growth. A lot of the druid spells bleed back into just classic druid things, and it gives this kind of muddied vibe if you're not careful and considered about the flavor you want. And when you're talking about careful and considered about the flavor you want, you can do that with any subclass. I think Aberrant Mind forces you to do it in a good way.
But that's kind of the whole point of subclasses. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. If your player wants to take certain spells and play a certain character, then yeah, maybe they won't feel like taking Circle of Stars Druid because it doesn't necessarily fit that aesthetic. But the question wasn't about like what's the easiest subclass that has flavor to take, because flavor is about serving a certain purpose with the sort of almost like reconfigured mechanics of, in this case, the subclass. And I feel like although maybe it's more niche to take Circle of Stars Druid because you can only have aesthetically like certain spells or abilities to kind of fit that vibe, you can still find creative ways to entwine other spells like the insect one you talked about, or entangle, like just giving them like a cosmic flare or some sort of, I mean, just off the top of the head, there's all sorts of ways you as a player or as a DM could, fit spells into the subclass, but also like if the flavor of the subclass is there for you to take, if that's what you want to take. And as far as Aberrant Mind being available for any character you want to play, I feel like that takes away from the flavor because it makes it more vague and makes it more solely based in the aesthetic of being this psychic Cthulhu type being. Because, I mean, other than that, you're still just kind of a sorcerer using psychic powers instead of, other types of power. And it doesn't really inform the character as much.
I disagree there, because first off, to the point of like reflavoring spells and stuff, I think that falls in the category of like potential for the player and like stuff that you can do, like the prodigy feat. Like, yeah, you can make it flavorful. It's not inherently flavorful on its own. Entangle is not inherently something besides grasping vines, and that's not what we're arguing here. And then I also think that a breadth of flavor is not like casting a wide net in terms of flavor does not decrease the amount of flavor, because if you read these options, they are varied. One of the psionic options is a psychic wind from the astral sea carried psionic energy to you. When you use these powers, faint motes of light sparkle around you. That's very visceral. That's very involved. And it's also very different than you were exposed to the far realm's warping influence. You are convinced that a tentacle is now growing on you, but no one else can see it. All of these origins, like there's an inherent character to that. And because those characters are varied, I argue that the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer has more flavor. It's just bursting it in different directions. It's flavor in a different shape rather than the narrow point that Circle of Stars is.
Real quick, we're still in a bit of chaos right now, but I do want to hear, I've heard nothing about Hexblade Warlock. Go back and forth from the source from the Druid. Before going to closing statements, I want to, Jake, any thoughts on that?
I know, I'd rather someone just challenge it and then I'll counter that.
I have some challenges that I've thought of for the Hexblade Warlock. The Hexblade Warlock, their greatest flavor is that they have almost zero flavor. All of the Hexblade Warlocks, it's the default patron. When you read their flavor text, it's like, maybe they're from the Raven Queen, they have enchanted weapons, but these enchanted weapons could be created from something else. They're Pact of the Blade. All of their abilities, like they're purely mechanical. You curse someone, there's no visual component to the curse or anything, and you crit on a 19 or 20, and you add your proficiency bonus to the damage. It's something that the Hexblade Warlocks that I enjoy most are the ones that create their own flavor in the subclass. It's good because it's a default. It's like the champion fighter. You can do something like make an ocean themed one in Critical Role. You can do something that I have a player coming up who made themselves their own patron, and their sword is a phylactery that they stabbed into themselves. That's great flavor that the player came up with because Hexblade is so vague and unflavorful that it can fit whatever specific niche vibe that you want.
Well, I see what you're saying, but I would say that the idea of having a sword that's most likely sentient is flavorful, and it provides something that none of the subclasses can do, really. I mean, yes, you could pick up a sentient item, but that's beyond the argument. Yeah, and I mean, it does provide all the opportunities, but just the idea of having this sword or whatever weapon it is, it can be any weapon, and that's another point for the flavor, it could be anything, is pretty cool. Like, you can deliberate with this sword depending on what your DM wants to do with it. You could.
I agree, but every warlock can deliberate with their patron.
Well, but that depends. Like, most DMs do it, that it's very hard to communicate with your patron.
We can go back and forth on this, but for the sake of time, we gotta move into our closing statements. I can't let you guys argue forever, as much as I would like to hear that. Who wants to start? Just a quick final remark.
I think that the Aberrant Mind, well, you can argue about flavor in like the quality of the flavor of like the Circle of Stars or the Hexblade Warlock, Twilight Cleric, any of these awesome flavorful options. You can argue about the quality of their flavor. You can't argue about the efficiency of the flavor of the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. It has flavor in all different sorts of character types that you want to use, and that flavor works equally well for each of them. You are turning into a living horror movie as you are gaining power, and it is reflected in each aspect of your abilities. It is reflected in each aspect of your spell casting, and it is reflected in the way that you gain your powers.
I'll go next. I'll say, again, look, maybe this is a low blow for me to take Circle of Stars Druid when our moderator is playing one, a very beloved one in our current campaign, but that does not take away from the fact that it really is the most flavorful subclass, because in its mechanics, in its concept, it explores another purpose or facet of the druid that kind of diversifies what most people sort of automatically go to as the flavor of a druid. And by having this this like astrological theme to it, it takes the abilities and the essence of what a druid is and adds them to sort of a new a new lane of play and concept and like character potential. And I do push back on the fact that there's only a limited both character type you can use for a Circle of Stars Druid. Just off the top of my head, maybe you, instead of just being this like astronomy scientist, you can be like a hippie horoscope person, you know? Like, there are all sorts of lanes. You just have to kind of think about it. And the same thing goes with the spells and abilities. Like, there are always ways for you to fit it in and enhance it even more. So yeah, Circle of Stars Druid, very flavorful, very cool. Bada bing.
Okay, I'll go. I think one thing that my subclass does more better than the other two is uniqueness. No, I'm going to stick to that because I think all of these provide like a flavorful template, but I think both theirs can be achieved through other subclasses and through other means. I think Corey's especially so. You just be a divination wizard, for example, with like an affinity to the stars. It's much the same thing. Or just be anything with like an astrologist kit. And kind of with Scott's, just you could be a great old one warlock, you could take the telepathic feat, stuff like that. But I think you can't really achieve what mine is, having a sentient being that you draw your power from. And it does provide you a lot of things to do with that. But I think it's unique and it's pretty cool.
All right. There's some very interesting things thrown out there. I did my best to be as objective and fair as possible. I will always my biases. I do have an aberrant mind sorcerer character I've been wanting to play for a while.
Yeah, that's why I picked it.
I knew it. His name is
I
Rigatoni.
also play an aberrant mind. I love them.
Yeah, my guy's cool though. His name is Rigatoni. He's a tiefling who wears a backward snapback hat and his horse mounted to the sort of like snapback part of the hat. He's very fun. One day he'll make an appearance. But before that, we gotta finish our debate. Question 2. So, D&D is designed for a sword and sorcery setting, but it can be flavored to fit any kind of genre. You know, you've seen mysteries or westerns, things like that, sci-fi. But unfortunately, not every mechanic translates easily from high fantasy to something else, especially magic. Now, I want to know from you guys, what is the best way to flavor spells so that it makes sense in these non-fantasy settings? And for the sake of being as objective as possible, I told you guys to choose a RPG setting that isn't fantasy, or setting, theme, genre, and then choose a specific way to flavor spells for that thing you've chosen. It's okay if you guys have similar settings or whatever, just choose one way to reflavor spells and magic to fit into these non-fantasy worlds. Scott, you went first last time. All right, I will roll Corey Jake to see who goes first now. All right, Jake, you're going first this time. Whenever you're ready, Jake.
All right, I'll start off with being honest. I've never DM'd a non-sword and sorcery game, so this argument's going to be a bit whack, but I'm going to go for an urban setting. And I think magic, right? You get your magic through drugs. I think this is something very prevalent in today's urban culture. I think it's with the times. I mean, you could always take the easy option, say there's always this underground magic culture, but you know what? This really blends in something really there in society.
Did you say trucks? I'm sorry.
Drugs.
Yeah.
Drugs.
Oh, okay.
I
thought
also
you said
heard trucks.
Y'all heard trucks? What?
This is a break in the time. I wanted to make sure that I understood.
Me too.
No,
I did hear trucks.
Spellbook.
I also heard trucks. I was waiting for you finish.
There are magical trucks
Okay,
going around the place.
Drugs. Cool.
Drugs, yes.
Continue.
But you know, you can work in like how this works in the system. So as you level up, you only have a certain amount of spell slots, right? But you don't want to take too many drugs or you'll overdose. So you're limited to the amount of spell slots you would have at normal level, right? And as you level up, you have a better affinity to drugs and you can move up the ladder. And I mean, high level spells are of course more potent drugs. So cure wounds just might be like a dose of cowpole. Wish would probably be something like a slab of cocaine. But I mean, if this drugs is an insensitive matter, then you could just do performance enhancing drugs. So wait, that is still drugs. But you know, haven't you ever wanted to be a wizard that just doses on ketamine to get a spell? Haven't you ever wanted that?
I'm not sure how ketamine would help very much in combat.
No, divination, man. It works. And it fits in well with the urban setting. And you know, technology where it is, it could be realistic in the future. Maybe COD suites will give you flaming hands or something. I don't know. Something like that.
Okay.
DM's discretion.
DM's discretion.
Jake has created two very compelling worlds in my mind now. One, his weird tripped out drug world, and then the other one where you cast magic missile and three little like fire trucks come out and go boom, 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 boom.
They're like Hot Wheels just going at the fastest speed.
Every time you try and cast Sickening Radiance, a big like Amazon van shows up and you pick out the package.
I did hear trucks, and I was very confused. I was waiting. Was this like a car setting? Like, did Jake go full?
You know, maybe
the rails?
I mean,
off road.
Maybe there's some truck drug. I don't know.
No, but I do. Your argument was good, and I like you said, I like the comparisons you made. I think it's actually a good argument and a good way to reflavor Magic in an urban setting. Next up, though, Corey, you went second last time. Yeah. So, in Scott, you're up now. I mean, it's hard to beat trucks. I don't think anyone took trucks.
But I just stick with the trucks idea.
I wish that it was trucks and not drugs.
Trucks would have won. You would not have had to debate trucks.
I mean, so we're going to the second best way to flavor Magic.
Should I?
Yeah.
Should I change my argument?
Right now.
I don't recommend you do,
Okay.
but whenever you're ready.
The trouble that you run into a lot when reflavoring spells is that, like, in the superhero genre, most characters have powers around a theme. In sci-fi, you have to pick the laser spells. Your spell choices are restricted for the sake of flavor in that genre. That's why I am reflavoring Magic in a particular way that I'll explain in a moment to atom punk technology for games themed like the Jetsons, Spaceman Spiff, and like a pre-apocalypse Fallout. You turn evocation spells into ray guns with like warbling circular rings, throw instant unfolding speed suits when you cast haste, used widely commercialized Prestos, prestidigitation paste to unleash nanites to solve your smallest problems. Not only does this add flavor, allow all of the spells to flavorly exist on whatever character you want without breaking the theme, it also adds a complex socioeconomic dimension to your game that isn't present for Magic and D&D. Spells are products that you can buy. What's the economic position of your fighter? What's the philosophy of a monk? Reflavoring spells this way as ridiculous 1960s Saturday morning cartoon technology allows you to encompass all of the spells, and it allows you to explore new themes of industrialization, class stratification, and consumerist homogenization. And if you're changing genres while playing D&D, what else are you doing it for than exploring themes that high fantasy isn't as well suited for?
Yeah, you have most of your time left. I was not expecting to pull out the atom punk, but you did. That's
Yeah. It's because it's nigh omnipotent, like technology. You look at the Jetsons; they could pull whatever out of like the side of the screen. You can have whatever magic you want. It's not like nothing breaks the, oh, how are you really like taking find familiar and putting it in space, you know?
yeah. Okay. That's a fun one. Interesting. Ooh, I'm so far so good. Corey, finish us off. What? I'm sure you have a fantastic way to add to these two already established methods. Corey, what do you have? How are you gonna reflavor Magic in your chosen setting?
Magic is one of, if not the most important facet of the D&D identity. In other words, you can't have D&D without some form of magic. And when it comes to genre, there's almost like a level of criteria that must be had with certain iconography and themes in a similar way. Like with Westerns, my genre of choice for this question, there are certain things that one simply cannot leave out. One which I would like to offer first is the real life example of gold, a staple of the West, something so coveted and valuable and quintessential to the Western experience back in the 1800s. Another important iconographic symbol is a staple in Western fiction especially, but we'll get to that in a second. When I was first learning spell mechanics in D&D, I stumbled across a very helpful video made by a man whose name I do not remember. He likened spells to shots and spell slots to ammunition, and it all fell into place for me. Casting spells is exactly like handling a weapon, a specific weapon that any true Western character cannot live without, an extension of themselves. It's another G word, Amanda. It rhymes with fun. Spellcasters in my Western campaign will cast their spells using a big iron, and their ammunition will be made of gold, a coveted material in the land with special powers, or reflavored arcana, that will act as their spell slots. Okay, imagine your wizard spellcaster firing a golden bullet into a horde of enemies that explodes into an infernal fireball, or perhaps a cleric shooting a golden bullet that shimmers into a rejuvenating instance of healing word to an ally. The ammunition-like nature of spellcasting lends itself to the six-shooter iconography of the Western genre, and what better way to differentiate the martial and arcane use of abilities than a material like gold? This reflavoring maintains the inherent mechanics of Magic and opens the door for plenty of opportunities to arise for a DM to combine the inherent symbols of the Western genre with the mechanics of D&D. Golden bullet spell slots, revolver arcane focuses, ye freaking ha.
Oh,
I'm so surprised.
I was not prepared for start with G and rhymes with fun. Now this is what I got for I made fun of Corey's previous choice about the prodigy feat being, very integral to a character, and then he made fun of my choice for the cowboy and the chef feat, and then I'm like, I'll remember this in regards to cowboy stuff, and I would be surprised if Corey, did you take my hint? Did you bring in cowboy just because of that?
I mean, I've also been working on a Western campaign for a little while now, but I won't say that last episode had no effect on me, because it definitely did.
Wow, I love all of these. Well, just to clarify, because I was laughing too hard to get all my notes down. Gold kind of powers a lot of the magic too in your.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, gold is pretty much the source of that power in this world.
I'm so excited for you guys to argue why yours are objectively the best, because they're all fantastic, but I want to hear why the other ones are less fantastic. I'll put a couple minutes on my timer and go and discuss. Debate, not discuss.
I'll start this one. I think we've all done great at creating a historical reference to our new way. I think one thing we differ though is in I actually don't remember what yours was, Scott, but oh yes. But the way it can affect mechanics. So, with drugs, you can't just get 2 liters of Calpon and down it. That won't go well. So you gotta so perhaps spells will be limited. Perhaps you can't get all these different spells in one go, or I said as lower levels you have less spell slots. And I've actually explained that through the fact that you can't overdose from drugs. Like, why would a low-level character in this Western campaign not have access to high-level spells? I mean, it's a gun, right? It's not actually their own power that's doing it. And if it's gold that's the answer, why they could just go and try and get rich? And I guess that's kind of similar with the Scots, right? Ray gun. I mean, if a low level got their hands on a ray gun, they themselves have nothing really to do with it. But drugs, as you level up, you become more attuned. You become a better, druggie. I mean, and on top of that,
what? Jake, you
I
gotta realize.
I just was taking notes. I was so consumed by taking what?
On top of that, I don't know what I said. I'm just going. I'm just going with it.
Here's the thing.
Top of that, what is cooler?
As you level up, you become a better druggie.
Look, Jake, you can apply that same way of thinking to both mine and Scott's standpoints. Like, if the way magic works in D&D, I mean, it's not like you automatically have access, or you don't have that magic is this commodity that you Let me rephrase this, okay? As you level up as a spellcaster, you get more attuned to magic, right? And I'm sure all of ours, we can kind of think either one, these are all commodities that we just kind of have and don't get more attuned to, or these are having inherent powers, things we have to attune to more by leveling up. So either way, we're kind of on the same page there.
But
Exactly.
my point is, if I have no experience firing heavy arms, but if I was presented with a giant ass Gatling gun, I could pull the trigger and it would fire whatever.
Okay, but that same thing applies to yours. You just said a big thing of cocaine.
I know, no, but I die. The point is you overdose. The point is you overdose.
Yeah, Jake, you run out of bullets eventually.
Hold on. What happens when you're out of spell slots? What happens when you're out of spell slots in this world?
Well, then the powers of the drugs just run out, and you either need
Jake,
more.
is that like a burnout or something? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, there'll be. Yeah,
you need more drugs.
Yes, it's a commentary on society. You'll enter this cycle of needing more drugs to power yourself, and you'll become more and more addicted. And
Corey,
as you get,
I want to move on to yours.
Kids, don't do drugs.
No. I want to go back to the drugs real quick, because I want to know, what do you constitute as a drug, for the sake of magic? Because it's like caffeine, a drug.
Well,
is that like a cantrip drug?
Ibuprofen.
This is a DM discretion thing, but it would be probably some scientifically enhanced chain of drugs, or perhaps just drugs in this world inherently have this power. It's up to the DM, really. I mean, I don't know if you have cowpole. I don't know why I keep using cowpole as an example. I like how it tastes. Maybe if you have cowpole and it gives you some dangerous spell, that would be a bit weird. But if you have something like Cure Wounds, cowpole actually heals you, kind of.
You know
So
what this? You know what this feels like? This feels like the section of like a 1950s anti-weed film before they discover weed's dangerous after effects. And people
Listen here, see, I hear you get all these crazy powers from it. See,
look, it's and I mean when the player finally racks up the willpower to snort like a kg of cocaine, they should be rewarded with spells like Wish.
No.
It's a reward.
Hey, this
so
poses
bad.
many problems, and it's
This
kind of
is-
it plays with
this is-
morality. We can talk about this flawed morality all
Right,
day.
you're
but
right.
we should
Let's
probably
move
move on.
on.
Let's
Kids,
move
don't
on.
do drugs. A statement from me: don't do drugs. This is D&D. Move on.
Let's move on. Corey, I love yours dearly. It's so specific. It's so incredibly specific to this one. Like, I want to play in this Western campaign, but like, it's one world where gold is magic and you can shoot it from guns in order to create magic. Like, that's not the Western genre at that point. That's the Western genre as a starting template for this one hyper specific world, you know?
Well, I mean, we're just reflavoring magic here. I mean, I understand there are so much more like facets of the Western genre than just guns and gold. But as far as magic was concerned, I wanted to find something that I could equate to basically like the existence of like arcana in D&D, and like something kind of on a similar just like value, and just like, I mean, I don't know. I just figured gold was a pretty good substitute for that. And just the way the spells work mechanically, I figured it could work well using.
No, I get the analogy. I like the slots and like the places where you can put the bullets. What I'm saying is, like, what if you want to play a Western style game where gold doesn't create giant spell effects when you load it into a gun? Like, what if you want to play kind of a more grounded Western style game? It's like, this is Western, but it's only the specific subgenre of Western where Corey does his awesome gold in guns idea.
In that case, it's
Stepping in
hard.
real quick, as a moderator, I am considering if you have a Western game in which you want to have those almost larger than life magical effects, to me it would make sense that gold could have such power.
I mean,
so that's nothing really, you know.
But, like,
I don't
is it
care
always
as
gold?
much.
But like, when if you as a DM wants to be like, gold is the whole point of the campaign. Maybe gold has become a scarcity, and now like the BBG hoards the gold. What then?
I mean,
I
sure.
mean, you
Well,
can't
same
really
same
do
thing
that.
about drugs. What if drugs have become a scarcity? And
Well, maybe.
I'm just
okay,
saying, like,
whatever.
to Scott, to your point, in that case, it's kind of like hard and almost restrictive to add spells in a campaign like that. Like, if we're playing D&D, you gotta have some form of like means to cast spells, or to like have a form of magic if
Real
it's not
quick.
specifically magic, though.
Before we get into final closing kind of statements, I've heard not a whole lot about Atom Punk, and
Yeah, I was
what
going to
Scott
say
would
about
about that.
Punk. Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. I think it will be, from my understanding of it, very complicated in combat. It sounds like all these different gadgets and gizmos do different things.
It won't be complicated in combat. I want to be very clear about, you say, I cast this spell, and then you pull out a fun little gadget and gizmo. You don't need, I'm not complicating the rules. I'm not adding additional mechanics. This is a pure reskinning of things. If you want to be like, I pull out my ray gun that shoots a fireball, and then I twist the setting to lightning bolt mode, and then I twist the setting to synaptic static mode, you can do that. If you also want to do a fun little advertisement for Presto's prestidigitation paste, you can also do that. The main thing I'm arguing for is having it be this like consumerist dimension of the world, and having it be like naturally tied to the same concepts that Atom Punk likes to cover: suburbia economics. And the growing consumerist homogenization of the world. And I think that this flavor lends itself well to that campaign setting.
I guess at that point,
Perfect.
I would just worry about So just one quick thing. I mean, I
All
like
right.
this idea a lot, and both ideas a lot. I think that one might run the risk of just like kind of having, I don't know, just the way I'm thinking of it in my head. It's just a very much like singular tone, like look at this comical way I'm pulling out like this gadget that I can use for a spell. Like I just don't really see it filling out any other like tonal but like a tonal aspect than just like kind of cartoony Jetsons like you described earlier.
All right. With that, I think we should head into our closing statements. Let you guys argue for a little longer as to get a little derailed talking about drugs for a hot second. Clarify, don't do drugs. Cocaine won't let you cast wish.
Yeah.
Talk to your doctor if you think you need any drugs for any other reason. With that being said,
Only the
closing
legal
statements.
ones.
I
Only
mean,
the
I
legal
Hey,
ones.
wait, real quick. Isn't the title of our last episode, that the episode that released today, is skill empowerment just taking Adderall?
Yeah.
It's a
That's the title.
theme. But I mean, yeah, I mean,
With that being said, I want to hear closing arguments. We can just kind of get through this and we can move on to question 3.
you know, the only notes I made for this question is really, what's cooler, firing a ray gun or getting scooted on meth? That's all I wrote.
Scooted on meth.
Anyway, final statements. I think they were all cool ideas. I think the idea of drugs fits very well in urban settings. I don't think we can deny the fact that drugs are a big thing in urban culture, whether that be a bad thing. But I think one of the things that I don't think was counted really was the fact that leveling, I don't think makes too much sense in the other two settings. I'd still think that a lower level, I don't think there's much stopping them from getting one of these higher powered things. I don't think you could say like attuned to a guns, the gun is doing the work, or etc. But I think the drugs fits in with the urban setting the most, and it really gives a commentary on today's age. And trucks. No, that's a different one.
I would argue that it, like, adding an economic dimension, adding an economic dimension and a dimension that's strongly tied to the themes of your world will not create any of the problems. Create any of the problems that Jake is saying that it will create. You can't get your hands on this higher quality product thing because you don't have the class status yet, or you don't have the money for it yet. You don't have the invisible magic credits or whatever your world puts forward as like the leveling requirements in order to get your thing. I think that there are 100 ways to balance it in game to make it fit with the leveling thing. Leveling is just a thing of RPGs that everybody has to kind of get around. And secondly, I do think that there is diverse flavor within this, because you can have like your spaceman spiff, or you can have like sudden scary moments where you cast insect plague and you release like your fun little whirring gadget thing and 1,000 nanites eat somebody alive, and things get very grisly and like dark sci-fi all of a sudden. Atom Punk is a diverse genre that can have diverse tones, and I think that's reflected in this. You are killing people with these spells.
Jake, we've already touched on the morality and the sort of commoditization of all of, and quite frankly, all of our methods of spellcasting. And Scott, fair enough. Again, I like all of these ideas, but I personally feel like having this connection to the Western genre, as well as the very iconic sort of visual and thematic significance that is like the revolver, this 6-shooter, this big iron, that ties very well into spellcasting, as well as the, again, commoditized, very valued material of gold. employs a lot of flavor in what could be a super, super fun genre that is a Western campaign.
All right. Wow, this was a fun one. I love a fun time trying to score this. But we're going to move into the third question. Try players don't. I keep saying players, debaters, similar things.
We're playing. We're just playing.
Yeah.
We're all players in the hands of God. No, I'm joking.
Yes, and I am God. So, really, a big purpose of flavor is to add dimension and personality and uniqueness to sort of standard mechanics, right? So what I've done is I'm going to do is send you guys a D&D Beyond character sheet link to a level 5 generic human fighter that I have created. Corey's face right now is very entertaining. I've everything filled out except for the name, background, and appearance. They're standard human fighter, not even variant human. They got those generic stats. They don't have any magic. I think they want champion as their subclass. You are welcome to swap out some equipment if you want. The languages and any tool proficiencies, not skill proficiencies, as long as the kind of number of things are the same in the end. If you want to also give them some items to fit some flavor I want you to give to them, you're welcome to. Even some magical items within reason for a level 5 character. But I want to give you guys some time. We'll stop recording, and I want to see who can add the most flavor to this white bread of a D&D character.
What's the ASI? The ASI is already chosen for us?
Yeah.
Cool.
The only things you can change are name, appearance, background, or not background in terms of the mechanical background, but backstory, as well as I think if Elven as the language, you may change that, and some tool proficiencies to fit whatever their backstory is, as long as the number of things are the same. Feel free to ask questions while we're not recording. But yeah, I want to see who can add the most flavor, the most spice, the most fun to a human fighter. All right, so you all have had a few minutes to add some flavor to this generic human fighter, as I called it. I want to hear who has the best, reflavoring, reskinning, such a just nice generic overall base. We even discovered that I forgot to give it a background, like mechanically. That wouldn't matter. This guy is, plain as is. I think we're gonna start with Corey. I believe you're going first.
Perfect.
Oh, right.
So the champion fighter is described as focusing on the development of raw physical power honed to deadly perfection, combine rigorous training with physical excellence to deal devastating blows. Now that's a pretty broad statement, but I feel like I would like to hone in on the sort of just honing of that deadly perfection and that determination to do some real damage. So my character, her name is Fira Muntar. Her backstory is that she is a recently escaped prisoner, hell-bent on getting revenge on the man who put her in jail. And so her appearance is extremely fit and strong, long, messy, unkempt hair. I swapped out Elvish with Dwarvish because for some reason I feel like there'd be a lot of dwarves in prison. And I gave her a thieves' tools
Wow,
tool
what's that
proficiency.
supposed to mean?
They're rambunctious. I'm
It's
sorry.
fine.
No,
I get
come
it.
on.
It's fine.
Jake's campaign. Come on, Grimdor. Come on. If he weren't the descendant of a god, he'd be in prison. Anyway, I gave her tool proficiency in thieves' tools because she's an escaped convict. And yeah, so just kind of using that champion concept of developing raw physical power because of a sort of primal character that's hell-bent on getting revenge on the person who, the character who put her in prison.
Yeah, perfect.
That's it.
Love it. You say her name is Pira Muntar?
Fira.
Fira.
F-E-R-A.
Okay.
Oh, and she's got a quotation nickname. They called her Grudge back in the Clink. But yeah.
Love that. Big, strong woman. Love that. Well, I think next up is Jake, I believe you're second. You haven't gone second yet. So Jake, I'd love to hear what flavor did you add to this human fighter?
Sure. My one is called Demarius Crestfallen. Their extra language or alternate language is Dragon language, Dragonborn. I don't know what it's called, but Draconic. But they were born of a wealthy Dragonborn aristocratic family, high up in the social order, and he was kind of bred and buttered up to be a leading person in the public, maybe the leader of a society. And Demarius always wanted this, right? Him being a Dragonborn after all. But he was gifted. He's gifted with the arcane arts and stuff. Very good with magic, especially clerical magic. He was very arrogant, and he always insulted those he thought bland and unimportant. And he especially hated humans, for they clearly had no apparent skills or abilities. However, one day on a stroll, he happened to hop on a human, looks like a diviner, and he treated that person poorly. And he was cursed that he would lose his precious dignity and brilliance that he loved so much about himself, and he would become an outcast to his family until he learned humility and respect and things. And so he was cursed to become a generic human with no talents in magic, but rather just kind of a skill with a blaze. And he never used swords before, seeing them as brutish and uncivilized, but now he must learn. And he must now, that even the most seemingly dull people can burst with kind of flavor. He must learn kindness, compassion, selflessness. And to do this, he has to rise to a great rank. And in doing so, surely he will realize himself that humans can be cool.
Well, so we got a reverse Beauty and the Beast sort of deal. Right, same premise, but instead it goes from like, instead of human to monster, it's monster to human. All right. You had me there at first. I was like, oh, this is not a human, but then you pulled out the curse. I'm like, okay, I see it. I do. All right, two great options so far. Scott, how did you flavor this character?
All right, so to provide a little bit of context, there's a photo that I have here on my phone from an excerpt from a farmer's almanac where these two parents decided to post what appears to be some sort of advertisement for how great their toddler is. And I have been waiting. I'll read you the excerpt, obviously with my character's name put in. I've been waiting at some point to play a character that is the product of this kind of parenting. And I think a champion fighter is the exact right mode for it. Swapping in my character's name, Bronwyn Rose Conway Good is a gorgeous toddler who is a pillar of beauty, symmetry, physical strength, and intelligence. Bronwyn's mom began following a Weston Price style diet in early 2013. After years of nutrient loading, blah, 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 foods included before, during, and after pregnancy and throughout lactation were cod liver oil, bone broth, bone marrow, pasteurized meat, liver pâtés, wild-caught fish, pastured duck, and chicken eggs, fermented food. It goes on. Not even 2 years old, Bronwyn has mastered almost 700 words and phrases and possesses skills and comprehensions well ahead of her age. You get the general idea. I want to have a person who has such a family like this, who has such incredibly high expectations of them, that has to hone their way, that same like flavor of like physical strength. I'm just a pure fighter. That's all I have. And you have this character who pressures themselves over and over and over again. Bronwyn Rose Conway Good, staying late at night out on the battlefield. I have to make a critical hit, or else they'll know that I'm not what they expected to be. That character.
Wow. Oh, wow. That was a great excerpt.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys, only 5 minutes for chaos here because we spent so long talking about drugs and my biases. So let's see. Oh, you guys 5 minutes for chaos before we wrap it up. Debate.
I like these ideas. I'll say that up front. I like all of these.
Yeah. They're good ideas. Jake, I feel like you're cheating your way around the human fighter.
No, they'll
Yeah.
entirely be being played as a human champion fighter, and
I
it's part of their
understand.
background.
I understand mechanically. But there is a certain promise in this of like, oh, okay, when I get enough character development, I become this high-level Dragonborn sorcerer.
No, but the point is, the whole point in doing this is that they will realize that perhaps they don't want to go back. That's the question, because they're going to realize that humans aren't so dull after all, and that maybe he'll realize that the pressures of being part of a kind of senatorial whatever family aren't so cool, and maybe he just likes swinging things with a sword. Maybe he's made friends on the way that wouldn't like him as this pompous dragonborn. Yeah, makes you think.
Yeah, my thing is, it feels like in order to get an engaging character, we are still taking a race and class. Like, you can make lots of engaging characters in D&D by taking a race and class combination and sticking them together, and you get a fun thing from that. And I feel that rather than taking this generic baseline and running with it to a strong character, we're taking a strong race class combination and then porting it over towards a human fighter.
Jake, I also think that while there is a nice little flavor in the curse itself, Dragonborn to human, I don't think there's much, if anything, in your character that has to do with them being a champion. Like, fighter, sure, human fighter, but like the champion fighter, like I feel like the character that you presented can kind of just be any subclass.
The way
that
I
matter.
thought, because I think champion fighter is the fighter subclass that's the most just kind of herder, I swing my sword. And I think that would have been the ultimate idea of brutish and uncivilized in the eyes of what this guy when he was a dragonborn. So I think the champion would be the most dramatic change from a master of the arcane arts to any subclass of fighter. Like all the others, even battle master is more like delicate, kind of tactical. Champion is just like smash.
Speaking of the flavor of champion, this, like, in the very name itself is this premise of like, I have to win, I have to be the best, I have to be the physically strongest. And that's why I like Bronwyn Rose Conway Good for creating this like this interior motivate. You can even do a thing where like every time they crit miss, you have to make a wisdom save or be stunned for 1 round because the expectations are just so high for this person. I think that it emphasizes the flavor that is already there in the class and builds in a very strong motivation.
I mean, I think the idea of it is cool. Being determined. What was their name?
Bronwyn Rose Conway Good.
Bronwyn. Okay, I'm not going to try to like I see what you're doing. Like it's not a huge change, you know. Like they're really determined, but other characters, like lots of characters, people make their characters determined, and I think the background you've led to is pretty cool. But it's not like you've come to any cool, wholly original conclusions there. They're just a really determined person. I don't see much other things than that coming from the background you put forward.
Yeah, it's standard. It's standard, like the human fighter is standard. But you have, instead of like determination coming from inner strength, you have determination that comes from inner weakness. The flavor is really in the RP with this, having those kind of expectations for yourself and having that like innate, now I need to be superior to other people too. There's like an anxious superiority that you have to project towards other people. And looking at these stats, you are not superior in a lot of ways. This thing describes them as pillar of beauty, symmetry, and intelligence. They have the physical strength part down, but not the charisma is a 10, the intelligence is a 10. You have this person who is wrestling with themselves. And I think that even though you're not like reflavoring the sword as like this special flourish kind of thing, I think that having just that motivation for why you swing the sword and why you crit on a 19 or 20 because you have to in order to be worth it to yourself, I think that's very flavorful.
All right, with that, we'll move into final statements.
Bronwyn Rose Conway Good. Bronwyn Rose Conway Good has a depth to her in this flavor. You can imagine a character arc for this character. You can imagine how they would function in an adventuring party, how they would clash with the other martial members of the party, how they would clash with spellcasters, those with higher ability scores than her, those with lower ability scores than her. And you have this very flavorful RP, which then turns into this natural arc for the character. This is a character with a beginning and an end point that you can clearly see when you're creating this thing, and you get that sense of that arc. And I think that the emotional flavor is more important for a human fighter than any other kind of like background flavor or like aesthetic flavor, because you are choosing the standard option. Now you make it complex.
In terms of my character, Fira Muntar, I think she is the best fit of having a backstory in that, especially like revenge and hellbent mentality in terms of being informed by the champion subclass denotations of developing raw physical power, training, physical excellence, etc. Jake, I think your character had more to do with human. Although I do understand the sort of herder thing you mentioned with the champion fighter. I feel like there are a lot of other subclasses from possible other classes that have a similar herder fashion that they could be humans from. And Scott, I really love the flavor of the backstory and the pairing with champion fighter, but I'm not necessarily sure if the flavor from the backstory informs them being a champion, because similarly, I think there could be another subclass from another class that backstory could fit well with too.
Okay, I guess I'll go. I don't know. I saw that why champion wouldn't fit. Well, I would question that fighter even. Your one card needs even necessarily be a fighter. I mean, it's a revenge prison story. That could be any class, I think. And I think my one really uses the stereotypical blandness of a human to kind of add to who the character is and their identity, with their whole mission to prove that humans are not necessarily as bland as they think. And I think while the other two are cool, I don't think that they necessarily rely on this person being a human, which I think is the important thing here. But also my one does fit in that fighter champion, and I already explained why.
All right. Wow. What a fun debate this has been.
I liked
And
it.
It was a good time. So many, a lot of good
flavorful.
discourse. It wasn't constructive. It was just fun. I think.
Yeah, what is flavor?
What is flavor? I didn't really define it in the beginning. Hoping it wouldn't cause any conflicts. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I had a good time. Now I hope you guys did too. But I have determined some winners. I have assigned point values to all your opinions. I have judged who's the most creative. And are you guys ready to hear the results? Should I do the final? I'll say overall winners first, and then kind of break it down from there.
Sure.
So it was a very close episode, because the whole thing about flavor being subjective, you guys had a lot of great ideas, and it was really hard to score them objectively, which is why there's a difference between third and first place with only 4 points overall. And overall winner, Scott, I have you winning by only 4 points. And Corey and Jake, you guys both tied for second. So Jake, you didn't really get last. You got second, technically. You got second and third. So it was
That's twice as many places.
Yeah.
Jake, I'll take third. I
don't know if I want to become. I don't mind.
Hey, it's all right. It was very, very close. So just break it down real quick. First question. I think I actually did have Scott coming in first, but point-wise, Corey got a lot there from bonus points. but not because I'm biased or anything, because of some good points he brought up. Unfortunately, in that first round, Jake, you did come in last, but the second round I had Jake's. Scott, I also take first in the second round. Corey, I had you take third, and Jake, you took second. What was my
Should have
thoughts
gone
on
with
that?
that truck idea. Should have gone with that truck idea.
I think the
truck world, truck spells.
I think Corey got some bonus points for going with the Western. I think that was great, but overall, just it wasn't as strong as Adam Punk, which I think was very a unique take on it all. And I think the drugs held some. I don't know. It held something. I don't know why. It just
You had
also
something there,
bonus points
Jay.
in there.
Yeah.
I did have bonus points in there too.
Attention grabbing.
Like,
I think the
maybe
lesson
each
here,
spell's a different drug.
the lesson here is don't let me DM an urban setting game.
Actually, the lesson here is don't do drugs. That should be a bigger lesson.
That's the title
But-
of this episode. You better believe it.
That's also a lesson.
But the last one I had, first place, I actually gave it to you, Jake. I think it was really good, and you're the only one who really played on the idea of the human, and I think you did justify it with the champion fire being kind of like herder, fighter, I am a big sword, and you played into that. I like the concept. I think, totally, go for it. It's all that flavor. It doesn't have to be as, I don't know, emotionally invested as Scott's maybe. Scott, I gave you last place because I just don't think insecurity is a good way to flavor a character. To make them their whole shtick is that they don't believe in themselves. I see where you're going for. I think it's a fun thing. The other ones are more fun though.
Fair enough.
And also, this character's low intelligence, average everything, and I see you're trying to play with that. Wasn't as strong. Corey's yours is solid, which is good, and they still had second place in that. Yeah, but in the end, Scott, you still took it with 2 first places, and wow, what an episode! Thank you guys so much for giving me your takes on flavor. It's one of my favorite parts of this game. Oh, how am I supposed to wrap? How do we summarize and wrap this episode up? So much happened.
What's your favorite flavor?
What's your favorite drug?
No!
No! No!
What's your favorite truck?
What's your favorite truck?
That's your
Shelby
favorite truck?
Silverado, Ford 4x4. Like, what are we looking at here?
Like,
ice cream
I
truck.
imagine
ice cream. Favorite flavor of ice cream truck.
Let us know.
Like just some celestial or holy golden truck appears.
If you have any fun character flavors, or ways you float a character or a mechanic, let us know. If you think it's cool, you want to share. Let us know what you would have answered for these. Let us know if you think should have won. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all those things, and we thank you for listening. Stay tuned till next week.
Maybe
Don't do drugs.
Maybe there is a truck that the drug dealer lives in, and he sells all of his drugs from the truck.